Here, and here. So many things to do.
Please sign this dotted line and this straight line.
Yes.
Initial this. Print your name here.
A drop of blood there.
Your ritual sacrifice here.
Wait. I wasn't prepared for that one.
Hold up, I forgot my goat. Wait, no.
Wait a minute, I don't have a goat. Share now public. Eventually we'll do that. Cool. Wait. Did it? Okay, cool. Cool, I think that should then show up there. Good! Alright, yes. Everything is where it needs to be. All is ordered as it should be.
I understood. Yes, everything is where it needs to be. Is that right?
What are you doing? I didn't even say your name! What?
I'm here to do cool tasks for you. They're kind of like tricks. Let me show you.
No!
Gee, thanks.
Do you want me to help you pick something?
No!
Or should I just surprise you?
No!
Okay, maybe we can try it another time.
What? What is happening? I didn't even say your name. Heck. I swear, sometimes Google just listens in when it pleases to, and then it wants to apparently do magic tricks for no good reason. Okay, anyways. Okay, so cool. So, I'm gonna get started up in here in just a second. He's doing it without me. I'm so sorry, Tim. I can't help it. You're doing important things, okay? Like I can't stop you from doing important things. You know, it's important. But hi, Tim. Hello. You can't see me yet, but you're about ready to see me in just a second. So yeah. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Thought Raid, a show where we take on your thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon Brown, owner of United Gamers Nations, and gathered with me today is Eric.
That's me.
That's him, who has joined us, and he is now one of our community engaging people. So say hello to Eric. And today, we're going to be doing something a little bit different than what we normally do. Namely, it is me with someone actually here with me.
That is a little different.
It is a little different. Typically, when we do Thought Raid, Tim, you're like halfway across the state, not the state, the city, out somewhere. Fix the screen. Production values will drop without me. Wow! Thanks for the vote of confidence, Tim.
I think Tim's bitter.
Maybe so. This is the perfect episode for you, Tim. But do let me know how loud or quiet we are, because we're probably a little bit of a distance away from the microphone than usual. So just keep me posted on if we are loud enough for you, and if we aren't, we'll adjust ourselves. That way you can hear ourselves a little bit better, because the microphone's like right here and we're like arms distance away from it, so I might have to like move up here just so you can hear me better. I don't know. So keep me posted. Anyways, today we're doing something a little bit different, just in the fact that I've got my friend Eric here, and we are gonna do the same thing we do otherwise. So we've got a topic prepared for you, and we figured that with the elections coming up, now is a great time to talk about how to love your enemies. So, because I'm certain that in the days of the elections, America is no short of enemies, and the American people probably could list on their hands the amount of enemies that they have, and then get more hands to continue listing the amount of enemies that they have.
I don't have enough hands for this.
I don't have enough hands for these enemies. So we wanted to really take a second and to look into how to love these enemies, because I think in this country, there's some things we got going for us as Americans. We don't just allow murders to happen without there being some kind of justice. It may take a little bit of time, but justice gets served. So we're not unable to protect against that. But there is still there's a lot of people we as Americans hate, And I think that really needs to get addressed, because hatred and not treating people you don't like well causes more of a perpetuation of the people we don't like, and just kind of, I don't know, like almost like fertilizing the environment for more of those type of people to flourish.
Yeah, bitterness only ever breeds more bitterness.
Right, exactly. So, in true fashion of thought raid tradition, I want to start with defining a few things. One, I want to really take some time to look into what is an enemy. Like, what does that look like? Because, you know, we could go like really extreme. We could look into the literal enemy of America, like, I don't know, some China, I don't know. But I think we need to get a little bit more specific on what that looks like. Off the top of your head, what are your thoughts on what an enemy could look like, Eric?
Man, enemy, I would just kind of sum it up in anyone that you like that brings negative emotion when you think about them. So whether that be an abusive person, like a leader of your country that you disagree with, a manager that treats you like garbage, someone who, you know, maybe they literally physically assault you verbally, emotionally,
Which would be bad.
Yeah, so like that's like the more intense versions of enemy.
Intense energy.
But even people that just like, you just think about them and you think, like, I don't like that person, you know.
Yeah.
And so I would just consider your enemy to be anyone who brings about like negative emotion when you think about them.
Yeah, I think that's important, the way that you kind of made that through a broad net, because I think, yeah, who would be considered an enemy would be pretty broad. Like you was saying, just like, you know, it could be someone close to you, like a family member, but it also could be someone you just meet off the side of the street and they just rub you the wrong way, and immediately they've become your enemy because, you know, they cut you off in traffic, or they, you know, did something that you don't think is right, and then all of a sudden you are thinking negatively towards them, possibly wishing harm, possibly wishing justice, possibly wishing that, you know, they have a bad day. But I guess anyone who brings about negative emotion in you is a really good net to throw, because I don't think it's just the obvious. I don't think it's just, you know, just someone who was abusive to you, or just someone, you know, who is the leader of a bad nation or something. Like, enemies can be very loosely applied, and should be loosely applied, because the goal, and I think the reason why it's really good that it's applied so loosely, is the goal is we want to get to not just loving enemies, but loving all sorts of people.
Yeah.
And so if you apply it to anybody who irritates you, then that kind of puts the responsibility into your court to look into, okay, why does this person irritate me so much? So that's being said, looking into the topic of like loving someone, and I guess also like particularly loving your enemies, like, what does that mean? What does it mean specifically to love someone? Does that mean that I just like treat them as if they're my friends? Does that mean that I overlook the wrongs that they did and pretend like it never happened? What exactly would you say loving your enemies, or just loving people in general, would look like?
I feel like that's a very like complex question, just in that it kind of depends on who that enemy is. Like, if you're talking about someone who like killed a family member or something, you know, like something that's like serious, like legal action is required, like loving them may mean like you're still gonna prosecute them, you know, you're still gonna like seek justice, but also it means, I mean, I'll pull up 1 Corinthians 13, that's the love chapter, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at least when it comes to you, it's like love it's patient, it's kind, it's not jealous, it doesn't brag, it's not arrogant, doesn't act unbecomingly, it doesn't seek its own, it's not provoked, it doesn't take into account wrong suffered. And so I think like just using some of these definitions, like if it's maybe like a low tier enemy, someone who just like cuts you off, or someone who just makes you mad at work.
Low tier enemy.
You know, like if it's just like the level 1 boss, like I feel like loving them, a lot of that has to do with seeing their intrinsic value and rather than how they treat you. Because like Jesus, when he's on the cross, he says like, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. You know, because he saw their intrinsic value, and he wanted and desired good things for them, regardless of how they were treating him. So it's like when you have like non-abusive enemies, like so just people who, you know, maybe just annoy you, just like treating them well and like not taking what they do to you to heart, and like maybe like when you get into the more like higher tiers of enemy, of like maybe you have abusive people, maybe like loving an abusive person means like you need to get out of that house, or you need to get out of that relationship,
not allowing them to abuse you anymore.
Yeah, you need to put some space in between the two of you, that way you can kind of, you know, focus on healing and whatnot. And then if you have like, you know, legitimate like things that require legal action, stuff like that, you know, I think there's a way that you can put space between you and that person, but not hate that person, you know, not wish pain and wish suffering upon that person, but still seek justice, you know?
Yeah, because one of the things that I learned early on was that love and trust don't go hand in hand. They're two separate things that have their own rules that govern them. Loving someone is an unconditional thing. It's something that you should be able to give to anybody, regardless of race, religion, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of beliefs, regardless of social status, regardless of, you know, whether they're doing something for you or against you, regardless if they're helping you or they're hindering you, regardless of what it is. I think God expects us to unconditionally love others, but I think it really needs to be, it cannot be overstated for those who are maybe younger and not as experienced have not experienced unhealthy or dangerous people. Trust is a separate process. It's something that is earned. And there's some ways it can be given to a degree, but it's ultimately something that is earned over time, where this person's multiple actions results to I can trust this person, rather than I'm just going to immediately believe that, you know, like begin with like you know, this person's gonna do the right thing. Like, I don't know that. I can't determine that. I gotta get to know that person. I think risk is involved when you're trying to develop trust. Like, there is moments where you're gonna just have to take a step of faith and see how they handle when you dish out a little bit of trust. But at the end of the day, if you're dealing with someone who has repeatedly been abusive, either they have been, you know, saying negative things about you constantly, causing you to question your own value and worth, or they've been physically abusive, in those cases, trust is not good to give. Love is, you know, you want to love them, but you don't need to trust them whatsoever, and would be better to get yourself out of that situation first if you can, and then, you know, begin to look at some boundary settings with that person, whether it be completely keeping away from them because they're that dangerous, or, you know, saying, okay, we can't have these kind of conversations because every time we do, this is how you respond. So, yeah, I think I'm going into, like, advanced things here. But
yeah, for real. But love, I think it's also important to note that love is an action and not a feeling. Like, like, someone might do something that makes you feel like you want to strangle them. And, you know, that might happen often. But I think, you know, if you don't allow that feeling to make you do something negative towards that person, you know, insult them, or, you know, wish pain on them, or, you know, whatever, or maybe actually physically assault them. You know, like, just because someone makes you feel negative emotions doesn't mean you can't love that person, you know. Yeah. Maybe you just need to shut down the conversation. Maybe, that doesn't mean you're not loving them. That just means, you know, they made you feel something not so good.
So I feel like I feel like for a lot of us, it might be good to look at not so much the more clear cases where the enemy that you're involving or dealing with is actually physically or emotionally dangerous, but let's look more at the more first level bosses that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, because I think we're going to more than likely encounter them before we're going to encounter those heavy-duty ones that will beat you up. So looking at people that annoy you, people that, you know, make you think, why? People that, you know, maybe it's like it's the teacher that always seems to, you know, make things harder on you, or the boss that's constantly calling you into work, or, you know, the
coworker that doesn't pull their weight.
The coworker that doesn't pull their weight. Yes. Yeah. Like those kind of people that are, you know, they're not great, but at the same time, you know, they're not a immediate threat to you.
Yeah, it's not like they're abusive per se.
Why should you love them?
Why should you love them? Because it's the right thing to do.
Oh, I see. All my problems are gone.
Oh, yes. The good old moral quandary. You know, I think personally, like, genuinely loving someone who makes life difficult actually sets you free. And it kind of starts with how you value people and how you view people. Because the world kind of influences us to believe that, like, what someone is giving you and what someone is capable of giving you, that's their value. You know? So, I mean, you see it, like, maybe in women, how beautiful they are. That's how valuable they are, because that's the good feeling that they give you. So, like, then you want to hang out with them. For guys, you know, how rich are they? How successful are they? You know, are they funny? You know, like, what are the good things that they can do for you? And then on the flip side, you have, you know, maybe someone's ugly, or maybe someone's, you know, poor, or, you know, whatnot. And it's just like, oh, those people are incapable of giving me good things, and they don't make me feel positive emotion. So, like, I don't really care about them. But the way that God made us, you know, we're made in His image, and we're all valuable, and we're all special. And so when you, like, begin to break away from society, like how society views people, and people's value, and start treating people with the value that God has given them, and see people how God sees them, then when someone mistreats you, it's not like, oh, they hate me because there's some defect in me, or like I'm bitter against them. You know, angry people have been hurt in the past, you know.
Yes. And
bitter people have been hurt, and a lot of bitterness stems from anxiety and fear.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when people are, you know, mean to you, or they make you feel negative emotion towards them, it's because they're struggling with their own things, you know.
Yeah.
They're dealing with their own bitterness and dealing with their own anxiety, and not in a good way.
Yeah. And
so when you separate that from how valuable that person really is, then, like, it's no longer an attack upon you and your identity, and you know, like, you get frustrated with that. It's like, wow, this person has a lot of problems, and it's coming out in this, like, in hatred or bitterness, or you know, maybe sarcasm, or passive-aggressive comments, or, you know, whatever it may be. Maybe they're lazy. I genuinely believe lazy people are just anxious, like, very anxious.
Yeah.
And so it's like, when you get to the heart of those issues, then you can see people for who they really are. And when people hurt you, it's like, oh, like, I don't care that you're trying to hurt me. I care that you're struggling, you know? Because then that empathy can come out, rather than just the reactive, like, this person is like, I really want to strangle this person right now.
We're about to throw some hands tonight.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a good way of looking at it, there's two important things, and I think you touched on both of them, but I want to expand them. One would be, hurting people hurt people. And if you can really grasp that, like, take some time, digest that, chew on it, spit it back up, chew on it some more. if you take some time to really look into that hurting people hurt people, the next time someone does legitimately bother you or hurt you, and go into that with that understanding, then you can then interpret what they're doing through that filter, and it's a really good way of not letting it bother you, because you know they're already going through something that made them logically think that that was acceptable. And so that allows you to grow in compassion when someone makes a bad decision, because you can then see, okay, what happened to them that made them think that this is acceptable to happen to me. So I think really having a hold of that is a good way. But beyond that, though, your value, like I think you mentioned a little bit of this, your value is extremely important to understand your value, particularly in Christ, but just in general. You know, if you knew how important you were, not to say that you're the greatest thing since sliced bread, I'm not going that far with it, but specifically understanding that you're not also dirt, you know, like, or we, okay, anyways, not...
Genesis 1, disagree with you.
Okay, wait, not specifically the emotional feeling of I am trash, is what I'm trying to say, but that, you know, God made you, and so you have value intrinsically built inside of you that God made when he spent time forming you in your mother's womb. Like, when you understand your value and importance to God, then it makes it a lot easier when someone wrongs you, because it's no longer any sort of reflection on you and how other people view you. It's more so just about, oh my gosh, like, what are they going through again? Just once again, mind off of self onto others. When you feel secure in who God made you to be, it's really hard to feel insecure when someone does wrong to you, which then empowers you to withstand misjudgment, or mistreatment is what I meant to say. So I think that's really important to bring out. And I feel like that might, I mean, we might have already covered part of this, but like, that happens sometimes. But what's the hardest parts about loving your enemies? Like, how to like further like open this question up, maybe in a way that we didn't already cover in some ways. I guess let's just make it personal. What are some things that happen to you that makes it, from other people, that makes it really hard for you to want to love that person? Things that irritate you, things that, you know, just like, why? You know.
That's a good one. Well, when people cut me off in traffic, that's annoying. Really? No, but I think a big thing for me and for a lot of people is like when people treat you like you're less than. You know, they treat you like, maybe they treat you like you're stupid. You know, I get that a lot. Like, I work at Cracker Barrel, I'm a server, and like, you know, every once in a while I'll get tables that like, they'll just treat me like I'm garbage because I'm a server, you know? It's just like I'm less than, I'm an idiot or something. And it's just like, that really gets to me, because it's like, really?
Why?
Are you serious?
Why do you do this?
Yeah. And like, that's when I realized, like, that's when I'm like allowing them to somehow dictate my identity. So anything that makes me feel less than or unvaluable, stupid, uncaring, cruel, or anything like that. When people say things or act in such a way that it makes me feel that, or communicates that to me, I think that makes it really hard to, you know, love someone. And I like, that's, you know, that's just a straight like attack on, you know, how do you view yourself? Because you got to view yourself in the way that God views you.
Yeah.
You know, because like if you're his kid, then you're a child of God. Like, you're valuable, and you are what he says you are.
Right.
You're his beloved kid that he cares about. His thoughts are for you.
Yeah.
And so it's like, when people say things and it gets into your head that like, oh, they're making me feel less valuable. It's like, well, they're not making you any less valuable.
Right.
Like, they're not making you, like, someone calling you stupid doesn't make you stupid. And other people, like, even if like everyone in Cracker Barrel thinks that I'm stupid, like, that doesn't mean I'm stupid.
Right.
Now, granted, if everyone in Cracker Barrel thinks I'm stupid, I might have to do some self-reflection and think, okay, like, is there something to what they're saying?
Yeah.
You know, so I'm not saying just completely ignore all criticism. Like,
Right.
there's definitely constructive criticism that really helps you build yourself up. But, you know, if someone is saying something about you that you know is not true about yourself, I think that's a big thing that makes it really difficult to love someone.
Yeah. I can understand. I think one of my hardest customers were the ones that, like, they just come in and, like, they're either, like, aloof or something, I don't know, and, like, they're ready to attack you for no good reason.
Yeah.
Like, what is happening? Like, or like customers that come in and they want to return their pair of shoes that they wore clearly several times, and they get angry when you tell them, I can't take this back. Like, stop. Or the customers that like I remember this one customer that came in and I'm really glad, like, God prepared me for this moment. He really did. First of all, let me give you context. I hate, or used to hate, not so much in this moment now that I'm no longer as much on the road as I used to be, but I used to really hate when people drove fast in a place where they're not supposed to. Like, in where I live, there is a infamous road called Silas Creek Parkway, and the speed limit is 45 miles per hour.
Are you kidding me? It's 65, 70. What are you talking about?
And no one, and it's like every other road that I've been on in Winston-Salem, people will usually drive, 5, maybe 10 miles above the speed limit sometimes. But in Silas Creek, like, the expectation, not even the expectation is that you drive at least 10 miles above the speed limit. Forget, anything less than that. It's got to at least be that. And it's so frustrating because Silas Creek gets crammed sometimes with terrible traffic because of these several amount of people that can't contain or drive their cars properly around the bends, and then they get into wrecks, and then there's just traffic upon traffic, and it toasts my biscuits. But as that was bothering me, I was praying, for justice, for God to bring justice and to increase the amount of policemen on I legitimately was praying for God to increase the presence of policemen on Silas Creek Parkway. And maybe he's done that. I don't know. I can't tell you.
I don't think so.
Probably not. But there came a day when God was like, look, instead of getting angry and frustrated with people that go faster, bless them. And I was like, no. But I quickly went from no to yes, and I began in frustration starting to bless the people. Like, someone goes vroom past me, I'm like, thank you, God, for blessing that person. Thank you, Lord, for taking care of their needs. Thank you, Lord, for setting them free and giving them what they need and chasing after their hearts, and bless them, Father. And so I did that for months. And then one day, I had this man come into my store, and I'm the assistant manager by this point in the walking company. And he comes in, and he needs shoes, and he needs dress shoes, and needs them now. So I'm like, what shoes do you need? And he's like, these shoes. And I go back into the stock room, and I grab the shoes, and I bring them out, and he tears them out of my hands, puts them onto his feet briefly. And here's the problem. As a associate, as a manager, I need to scan his feet, figure out what arches he has, ask him questions about what else could he be possibly looking for, talk about certain things. I couldn't do any of that, which is fine. I don't necessarily want to, but the walking company would want me to do that, and so I'm stuck between two requirements. He doesn't have patience. He's angry and testy. I can't move fast enough for him. And then finally, in my frustration, I say to him, don't get testy with me.
So, boy, if you don't.
And did the flames of hell rise within his soul when I said that? And he was like, who is your manager? And I'm like, I'm the manager. And he was like, who is your district manager? I'm like, back stock room because it's empty. Because he explained to me, he calmed down. Last minute, there was barely any information to go off of. He was frazzled as it was. and then it got canceled, and and it's just like I don't know what to do. And so I was able to apologize to him, and it turned well, and it turned into an actual like growth experience. Which, hold on real quick. Okay, I just make sure no one's on YouTube saying anything, because sometimes we miss that. Anyways, focusing. And so it turned out really good for praying for them. But I'd say all of that story to say that people that rushed me. But I can tell you one thing, though. I don't know if this has ever happened to you. It's had to have happened to you. Have you ever had anybody say to you, Eric, oh, you did that because you're a young white male? Or because of... I've had that happen to me. Oh. And I've only gotten livid to the point of shaking twice. And it was over a phone scam and some woman coming in and saying to me that I voted in a particular direction because I was a young white male. And I was like, I need to get out of here. How dare you just take the entirety of me and just sum it up to the fact of my race and my gender and my age. Mm-hmm. I'd never been more angry.
No, like literally, bro. Because I'm so like kind of middle ground in a lot of things, I have friends on like both sides, conservative, liberal, and like I'll tell you what, man, like especially on the liberal side, like just the identity politics and like just the sheer hatred of men and of white people. I'm just like, sorry for existing. And it's just like, I have no, I don't hate liberal people, I don't hate Democrats. I have no like hatred in my heart towards those people. It's just like, everyone has their own pitfalls and their own failings, and I think that's one like big thing that liberals and Democrats have, is that like and I think conservatives, they have their own
things.
We
like
all have
about
our
the
own
topic
issues.
Of abortion.
Yeah,
especially.
Like we all have our issues in life, but I think that's one thing is I think a lot of these movements that like they're in it for good things, like empowerment of women. Like I'm all for that. God made women in His image, and they are valuable and important. Same with black people; they're made in His image. They're valuable. They're important, and I love them. But in a lot of these movements, there's a lot of bitterness. Yeah. Because there's mistreatment. And, you can see a lot of this just like, they're bitter towards white people because, like historically white people have done a lot of trash stuff, yes. Like I'm not defending any of that. And men have used power to abuse women. That's definitely true. Yeah. But when movements start to be like moved forward by bitterness towards a certain race or gender, that's when I have to take a step back and like, I'm like, I can't support that because... Right. Like bitterness cannot be my driving force. It has to be love. It has to be, seeing people the way that God sees them. And so it's like, yeah, I've definitely like seen so much bitterness towards like me because, I'm a white male. Yeah. Like I'm a Christian. I'm a white male. Like I'm according to certain dogmas, like
just
I'm
go hang yourself now.
I'm the worst of the worst. And like if I really cared, not to say that I don't care what people think of me, but like if I like took identity from what people think of me, like that would really bother me. Now I'm getting to the point where it doesn't bother me so much. Yeah. Because I've like, yes, like each of these labels is true of me. I am a Christian. I'm a white man, and whatnot. But like I'm a child of God first of all, and like you can attack that all you want, but like that can never be seen as a negative, like in my eyes. But I mean, I definitely, I'm picking up what you're throwing down. like yeah, people who like just like see what I look like and the group that I'm a part of, and I think conservatives are just as guilty of this when they see like a liberal or transgender or homosexual. Yeah. They're like, oh, you are in this camp. You're just just a liberal.
Could we set the stage right now as we're coming to the end of these elections that liberals and Democrats are not the end of the world, Republicans and conservatives are not the end of the world, okay? Neither one of them, it's just, that's not we're not enemies.
Yeah. We have no hatred towards anyone.
No. No. So that just needs to be, I think in some ways, one of the things I at least appreciate about liberals and Democrats is the consideration of how this might be perceived. Like, I think sometimes with Republicans and conservatives, we get so brash that there is literally a part of the fruits of the Spirit is gentleness, self-control, and so I don't think it's great that we just say whatever we want to say without any kind of cares or worries, because you just hurt people that way. And I think there was a really great analogy that was made where it was a story about a father and a son, and the father was having the son put up a fence, and as he was doing that, he did a quick job, and he nailed some of the nails into the fence just all wrong, and some of them were bent and stuff, and there was a story that kind of came out of that. It's like, you can obviously remove the nails and put them back in properly, and you'll have a proper fence. But what won't change now is there's now a left scar when you've done it improperly. That's not going to go away. You've now put a hole into that wood that's just there. And so it's the same way with people. It's like, yes, we do need to forgive people. We do need to move on from situations. But if you just go without any consideration about how this may affect another person, you're going to possibly make a decision that's going to affect that person, and they're going to have to grapple with it for the rest of their lives between them and God. Maybe not like the forefront of their mind. Maybe they're very healthy and they have the ability to move on very well, but it's still there. I went through several years of an emotionally abusive and controlling family friend or family friends that existed in my life until 2012. And, since that point and since the fallout of our families, I have forgiven them. I don't pray harm against them. I want what's best for them. I protect their identities. But they still, sometimes things come up that remind me of what I went through, and I have to go through forgiving them again. And that came out of just reckless selfishness towards me and my parents, and not really considering about what we see and what we feel and what we believe, and just ignoring that entirely. And it's caused irreparable damage that only God can really fix or bring to a better place, or use it however God works through our imperfect bodies corrupted by sin to get it to some better state. He does it, but there's just still times that things pop up, and I have to remind myself, okay, this person is not that family friend. And I have to remind myself, okay, I don't have to immediately put up walls with this person that have no characteristics with that family friend. I can lay down my walls here. It's okay. Yeah. So one of the things I appreciate about most Democrats and liberals is their consideration for just being thoughtful in how they present things, rather than just immediately because I understand freedom of speech is important. But at the same time, I think it's also important, as you're speaking freely, to be considered in how you're presenting it, and are you thinking about it thoroughly before you just say it.
Yeah, how you say something is every bit as important as what you say.
I'm sure some of you people, especially, maybe I imagine some guys have been told this or had to be told this, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah, because if you say it in a way that sounds condescending or belittling or something of that nature, I'm not going to receive it. But if someone tells it to me in a way that they're being thoughtful about it, and you can tell that they care, and it's the same exact thing, I'll gobble it right up.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true, man.
So I think this goes nicely into the next thing. There's two questions, and they kind of go hand in hand. One is, how do you motivate yourself to love those you don't like or who don't like you? And how do you hold yourself back when they get under your skin? Because there's definitely some preparation work we can do before we re-encounter the people we don't like, but there will always be new things that we'll have to deal with in the moment and navigate. So how do you prevent them from getting under your skin in those moments that you don't, again, punch them or something? I don't know. Like, let's just start with the beginning. How do you motivate yourself to love those you don't like or don't like you?
I know personally it starts for me is prayer, is being like, God, like, I can't love people, like, if my heart is not submitted to God. And I can't love people if I don't see their genuine value. And that's something that the Holy Spirit has to do with you, has to do within you. That's why love is it's a fruit of the Spirit. You know, it's not something that you work hard and try your hardest to love people. It's like, no, you kind of let God change your heart and how you view people. So starting it with submitting it to God in a prayerful attitude is like, that is always going to be my first step, and I think it should be everyone's first step to like coming towards someone with love, is like giving it to God first of all, because he's the one that works through, and he's the one who changes the heart. So I think for me personally, like, at least for step one, like, that's the most important thing for me. I don't know, what's your first step?
Well, I think that's a good preemptive start, just beginning with prayer. When it comes to motivating myself, I think it starts. It needs to start with, I feel like for me, being humble about my own shortcomings, and working on myself first. Because once I understand my place in the universe, so to speak. Yeah, for better lack of words.
Yeah.
Or for lack of better words, I keep getting that backwards. Anyways, once I understand my own imperfections, then it is a lot easier for me to have grace for someone else's imperfections. So, like, if I go about it and I don't see how I'm just as equally capable of doing what they're doing, then it's like, like, you should just be able to get over this. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. Like, this is not acceptable. And there's no grace and no compassion when I involve. But when I take a second and recognize that I have done something like that, maybe it was not to the same degree this person has done it, or at least I theorize they're doing it, but I have done some variation of that, or that I am capable of doing that, then it's like, okay, so I don't like this. But I want you to, it's like thinking about others more than yourself. It's like, I want to give you the grace I want someone else to give me.
Yeah.
If I were in your shoes, because I've hit a few situations where I was really irritated. Like, for instance, I run a role play in my United Gamers Nations server on Discord, and it's great. It's been going on for I would say nearly 3 years, a very long while, still going. And one of the problems that I had when I was working is not having either the inspiration or the emotional energy to roleplay, and that irritated the crap out of people, and we always had a back and forth about that, and it was hard. And now the tables have turned, and I have become the person with all this time on my hands, and they don't have the time on their hands, and I've got some people in some of my roleplay teams that are like, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm busy here, I'm just like, I have other people that do have the time, and you don't have the time, and I don't want to run out of inspiration. I don't want them to run out of inspiration. And I love Axeman, who was with us last time. He was like, so how does it feel, Brandon? I'm like, stop it. But he's right. I did the same thing. I was in the same boat not too long ago with not having the time and energy to do these sort of things. So, recognizing my own shortcomings and that I'm just as capable of letting people down as the people that are letting me down in the moment enables me to be more compassionate, to motivate me to love my enemies. Another great example is when I was getting angry with people that were driving above the speed limit. And I was like, how could you do this? This is terrible. You know how this is dangerous for you, blah, blah, blah. And God was like, the law is there to protect those that follow the law, and you go 5 miles above the speed limit, so you technically are just as guilty as everyone else who's speeding. I'm like,
Got him.
no! I can't go 45 miles per hour. It's too slow, and everyone else is going 55. I can't do this. I could at least meet them halfway and go 50, and it's like, sorry. And so just recognizing that I'm a part of the problem.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that's a really important thing, is like kind of turning it in on yourself. Like that, definitely seeing your own shortcomings. And also, like, one thing God has really been working on me is seeing every, I guess, all suffering, if you can consider that suffering or whatnot. If I see like negative situations as opportunities for God to work, then like it's like when someone's mad at me or a manager like does something to me that like makes me mad, like then it's not like I'm not focused on them and what they're doing to me. I'm focusing on me and being like, okay, like God is allowing a little bit of pain into my life to kind of bring a problem that is within me out, like that refining fire.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, okay, like I can remember, I don't know if I've told you this one time that like this one Saturday morning, my tables were outside. Like I got in and it was like 55 degrees out. No one wants to sit outside at like 10 in the morning, 55 degrees out. It's cold. That's cold to us Southerners. Okay, for you Northerners, that's what cold is here. But like it's cold. I wasn't getting sat, and I was frustrated. And I was like, "Can I just go? I'm not making any money. I'm a server. I make money off of tips. I'm not making any money." And when she said no, I got really frustrated because she wouldn't let me go home. And like I didn't have anything to do, so I just kind of sat down and I was moping. And just generally being pathetic, and God was like, well, why are you frustrated right now? I was like, I'm frustrated because I'm not making any money. So God's like, well, it's me who's taking care of you. I'm the one who takes care of your needs, so why are you frustrated? I was like, oh, okay. Then I'm frustrated at Sam or I'm frustrated at my manager because somehow, like, she's not letting me go home. I'm not making any money, and no, I'm not gonna make money, so I can't pay my rent, and I'm gonna die. I don't know, like that's all the stuff that's.
Ooh, that's escalating quickly.
That's the stuff.
But this is how it is, though.
And so like I sat down and I was like, okay, this is something that like I'm just not trusting God with my finances at this point. That's why I'm frustrated. And so I gave that to God, and God was like, okay, cool. And I went back out, and Sam was like, you know what, you can just go home. And so I was like, oh, great, I can go home. And I went home, and I had a great rest of the day, But even if she hadn't let me go home and I made no money the rest of that day, I still had the mindset in me that, like, okay, God's got my needs met.
Yeah.
Because that's the point of pain in life.
Yeah.
That's why God allows pain in you or to come to you, so that it can refine you and can bring the things out of you that you're believing that are wrong. And so like that really showed me like how to approach people that bother me, and how that like you like if you're frustrated at them and you're so focused on like and being angry at them, you're missing the really cool lessons in life that God has for you, so that you can just generally live a more free, blessed life. And that's what God has for you.
Yeah. I think that's really good to look at, it is that the very people that are capable of breaking you also have the ability to refine you instead and turn you into freaking gold. Yeah. I mean, like, absolutely. Some of the there's a couple people in my life that I love to death that could have been my enemies, but instead, just because I think God, because of my personality, I never really look at them as enemies. I think the average person would, but for me, because I'm a rule-following person and they provided clear directions and rules, I just naturally gravitated towards them. But anyways, they at the same time were also equally breaking me in the process, and for the average person, that's a very uncomfortable. That would immediately become number one enemy. You've seen, I'm sure, if you have been around for a while, you've probably seen movies of the annoying teacher or the coach that would never let you get away with anything or whatever, and then they turn out to be your biggest ally kind of type people. Like, your very enemies have the ability to break you, but they also have the ability to refine you. In the same way as those people that are really tough on me did break me in some ways, they also refine me in even greater ways that have, even though I've been under the refinement of, do I hear God's voice? Am I able and capable of being a manager even? Because of all of that scrutiny that I was under, that would otherwise I would look at as, you are my enemy because you're breaking down my self-worth, I instead was able to turn that with God into, oh no, I am very capable of managing, and I am very capable of hearing God's voice. And it's because of that constant persecution that I was under from these people that I am where I'm at. And honestly, another really important thing, if you can take away anything, recognize that the things that irritate you on other people are the things that you are probably most capable of doing yourself. Otherwise, they wouldn't irritate you. That hit me one day, because I recognized that the things, for instance, in that family friend again, that bother me so much, that are being manipulative and controlling, I can be manipulating and controlling. I am sometimes very passive-aggressive and sarcastic, and when I say something and laugh, you should be paying attention, because I'm not always meaning what I'm laughing at. I'm actually bothered, and I've learned to facade that with laughter. So a lot of my laughter is genuine, but sometimes I'm just not upfront and I laugh about it when actually I'm really bothered, and that could be controlling in a passive-aggressive way to make you, I could sometimes be smothering with people and like, you should do things this way, otherwise, whatever, and I'm very capable of those same exact things. So in the same way, to just further drive home the need for humility, recognize that the things that bother you, about the things in your enemies that bother you most, are probably the things that you are also most capable of doing. And when you get that on the inside of you, then it becomes even easier to motivate yourself to love them, because in a way, loving your enemies is loving yourself. And I want that to sink in. Loving your enemies is loving yourself, because in the same way that you judge other people, you will be judged. So if you judge with mercy upon the people that irritate you, that maybe they're having a bad day, perhaps they've been through a hard life, perhaps they just lost something important to them, when you judge them in those ways, then other people will come to judge you in those same ways and give you the same grace. It may take time. Building that sort of environment where you get back what you've sown in takes time. It's a garden, and nothing grows quickly in a garden except weeds. So to get that proper garden built where you have a group of people that are surrounding you, giving you the same kind of grace, takes time. But that's all built through understanding that loving your enemies is you loving yourself, or it's a way of loving yourself. I forgot how I said originally. I've already botched it. Oh well. I'll have to go back and turn that into a quote or something, because it hit me.
Yeah, that's definitely good.
5440. Okay, maybe if I can remember that. I gotta write this down. Where's my pen? 5440. I rarely do this. It's really hard for me to think on that. But yeah, I think those are really important and good ways of doing that. So I think it's important then I think we'll skip over that one between here. We'll go to this one here. Mm-hmm. And that is the last thing. How do you stop bitterness from taking root in your heart towards your enemies? And I want to go over that question, because I think that's the number one thing that makes it hard, the final hurdle that makes it hard to want to forgive your enemies, to love your enemies, to do that kind of stuff. It's forgiveness. It's the issue over forgiveness. It's bitterness, not willing to forgive the person. So my question is to you, Eric, how do you stop that cancerous root from taking place in your heart?
Well, first you have to recognize it where it is. Because I think a lot of times you can just kind of like autopilot in bitterness and you don't even realize you're doing it. Like if you're just in a bad mood and you're just like, you know, like everything that like people do, like just rubs you the wrong way.
Woke up on the wrong
side of the
bed.
bed.
Yes.
Yeah, like all of that. Like I guess self-awareness is a big one, and just like seeing like, okay, what does it look like when I'm bitter? Because some people, when they're bitter, like, you know it.
Yeah.
You know, like they're gonna tell you if they're bitter, because it's just like, it's just out there. They're gonna say everything that's coming from their heart.
They're probably the people that either they've grown up and they're used to that, and so they don't think anything about it, or they've been bitter for so long they no longer recognize the bitterness of their own heart, and they're just displaying it for all to see.
And that's true, but I also think there's just people who are like, they're just loud. You know, there's just like 8s,
like
man.
me.
Yeah, Enneagram 8s are just, they're just loud, man. What they're thinking, you're gonna know it, whether it's good, whether it's bad. That they're gonna let you know. But someone like me, I'm more like, I'm a 9, so I'm more like passive. And like, I'm gonna hold bitterness close to my chest because I don't want to be known as the bitter person. So like, I can be festering in bitterness, and it might come out passive aggressively every once in a while. But like, I'm very capable of just holding it within, smiling, treating you really nicely, but like wanting to strangle you. Like, I'm very capable of that in me. And so like, just recognizing how bitterness motivates you and like what it looks like in your life, and that just takes like self-awareness, watching yourself, you know, focusing and seeing how you act, and then maybe talking to people who are closest to you and seeing how they view you, like especially people who love you, and just be like, okay, like, can you tell when I'm angry, when I'm bitter? So like, locating it is the first part, and then the second part for me is just being like, when I'm bitter, is being like, okay, God, like, how do you want me to view this situation? How do you view this person that I'm bitter towards, this situation I'm bitter towards? And then move in that direction, rather than focusing on the emotion and acting on what the emotion says, but to act on what God's word says. And sometimes, like, you know, sometimes like the feeling of bitterness doesn't go away right away, but as you act on like, okay, no, this is wrong, and I'm going to love people, and I'm choosing to see them for their intrinsic value, that bitterness can kind of melt away a little bit, you know? And so it might not go away like right away, like magic, but I think as you act in love, and as you choose what mindset you're going to take, a loving attitude and an attitude that values people and wants the best for them, then the bitterness in your heart can kind of, you know, even if it doesn't completely go away, it becomes manageable, and it becomes like, you know, it doesn't become your primary motivating factor.
Yeah, I think it's really important to pay attention to what's irritating you about the person, and ask yourself, why does this irritate me?
Yeah, that's good.
Because that's how you get towards the recognizing it in your own life and what that looks like in you. So by first recognizing, what is it about this person that's irritating me, and then why is it irritating me? Because as you begin to look into that question, then you can see better, you know, where the bitterness is hiding. Like, pain is an important part of living. Like, it's without pain, people perish, unfortunately, because that pain helps you know when something is wrong. You know, people, I think they've been discovering that, I like to keep bringing this up, and I need to do a little bit more research into this, but to my understanding, the main problem with leprosy, which has been an issue in the past, and we've been getting a better handle on that, is that, you know, it's not that your face or body rots per se, it's that you lose feeling in parts of your body. And so a person will do something that would be, you know, a normal activity, but do a little bit harder than their body can handle, and not know that because they don't feel, and the next thing you know, they've lost some part of their body or really damaged themselves, and they have no way of knowing that because they don't feel. So you know, so I guess in that case, we should even begin to look, like, if you have gotten to a place where you're numb, like, you really want to begin digging and figuring out what irritates you, to kind of peel back those callous layers to get back to feeling. You need to feel. You need to know what you're feeling, because they point towards what's wrong. Once you feel something, once something irritates you, once you begin to recognize that place where it makes you withdraw from that person, makes you want to go upstairs and be away from everyone, it makes you want to, just immediately yell at someone, then you can begin to look into the why it bothers you, and then from there, as you begin to recognize that, you can begin to work towards forgiveness. And forgiveness is really important when it comes to keeping bitterness out of your heart. Literally, and again, I'm going to need to do a little bit more research on this, but I heard that forgiveness helps open up pathways that are blocked in your brain for new growth and plasticity, new construction. When unforgiveness prevents the brain from growing in certain ways, forgiveness allows it to grow again, create new synapses. So it's very important for getting rid of bitterness to forgive people that bother you. My grandmother on my mother's side, thank you for liking the stream, Zach. I appreciate that. My grandmother on my mother's side died of Alzheimer's, and it was a very hard thing for me to go through because just like with my own mother and my father, I'm much more connected with the women in my family because they're more emotionally dynamic, and my dad and my granddad were not. And I was born with my granddad on my father's side, and my grandmother on my mother's side. Ironically, that's just how it was. So I emotionally connected with my grandmother, not so much my grandfather. Forgiveness, yes. And when she was dying of Alzheimer's back in late 90s and early 2000s, it was hard. I was crying because I was losing the only grandparent that really connected with me. And eventually, I think she died in 2002 or one, somewhere closer to that time frame. And but one of the interesting things that I've known about my grandmother as I've gotten older is that she was a person that had bitterness. Mainly towards herself, and I think that's an important thing too. Like, if you're trying to get rid of bitterness, you have to forgive yourself just as much as you're forgiving other people. If you can't forgive yourself, you're not going to be able to forgive other people, because it's cognitive dissonance in your brain to do that. It's like, why would I forgive you when I won't even forgive myself from doing that thing?
Yeah, I know personally, like, if I can interject, like, I struggle a lot with self-hatred. In the past especially, but I've largely been set free from that. But like I there's kind of this, like you said, cognitive dissonance of people who are very depressed and who hate themselves, who are very anxious, of being like, I treat other people really, really well, but I treat myself like crap, because I'm not worthy of love and other people are. And like, for the most part, like, you really do treat people really like people, because you don't want people to feel the way that you feel. But also, like, if you pay more attention, like, you're also very bitter towards people, and you can be very underhanded, and like, other people who might struggle with self-hatred, like, pay attention to that. Like, as much as you love on other people, like, pay attention to ways that maybe you're like underhanded with people, or bitter towards people, and you'll see, like, you really do need to view yourself right, and you really do need to forgive yourself and see yourself the way that God sees you, and love yourself. Because if you don't do that, then that bitterness is going to fester, and even that like the priding yourself on treating other people really well, that's going to go away, because you can't survive being bitter towards yourself for a long time, without that turning into bitterness towards other people. Yeah, and I honestly, it is my personal opinion and observation of the matter that I feel like my grandmother could have lived longer if she would have forgiven herself for the things that she had done, and forgiven the other people that had done things against her. Because I really feel like the things we take for granted when we're young turn into health issues when we're older. I've heard of many connections between bitterness and cancer. As well, when people are just unwilling to forgive someone, it becomes eventually into a cancerous type of thing. And I'm not saying that every physical ailment we have is a byproduct of sin, although we live in a fallen world that's been affected by sin. But there's a good chance, though, that whatever area in our lives that we choose not to face probably empowers the body to become
corrupted in the older we get. So at least as a physical manifestation, a physical motivation, of wanting to forgive, to be good to yourself means to be willing to forgive and to forgive others that wrong you. So I think, being to stop yourself from being bitter, you want to forgive others. You want to recognize the things that are irritating you so that you can figure out why are they irritating you. You want to just again going to the whole thing with loving your enemies, just recognizing that you're not perfect, so that that there's something that needs to be forgiven within you even. All these kind of things work together. But I think, honestly, that if you love your enemies and you forgive them and you forgive yourself, I think it's so empowering to live a really much more carefree, enjoyable, fulfilling life. You may not have everything you want in life. There may be situations that might be taken out from under you by doing the right thing, but none of those things will be able to define you and steal your joy, and your joy will not be circumstantial. Rather, it will be something that is a constant, because you and God are defining where you are at, not other people around you. God doesn't change. He's always part of his non-changingness is that he's always making new things, but yet he himself, his character, his goodness, his love doesn't, and he always loves us unconditionally. And so I feel like, when I'm not exactly sure where I was going with that, but I'm just thinking, like, I think we're just talking about just, like, finding your identity and stuff in God and stuff, which empowers you to love your enemies, is what I'm trying to say. Like, it was coming, and then just, maybe you have a better way.
I think, like, at least, like, what's coming up in my spirit is, like, if you are living a substantial, a good life, if you are satisfied in Christ, if you are satisfied in what you have, if you are motivated by love, and you love your enemies, like, loving your enemies is a result of having peace and having joy, and enjoying your life, being thankful for what you have. So it's like, why love your enemies? It's like, because, well, do you want to have a decent life?
Do you enjoy happiness?
Do you enjoy happiness? Do you enjoy joy? Because it's like, it's not like you need to love your enemies. I'm going to beat you down with this fact. Like, you need to treat people right. That's not how it is. It's love comes from freedom.
Yeah.
Love comes from understanding your own value, understanding other people's value, and, like, you're not motivated by negative emotion and by hatred and whatnot. And so it's like, why love people? It's like, do you want to be free?
Yeah.
Do you want to have a good life?
Do you want your enemies to define you?
Yeah.
Because forgiveness and loving them makes God and what's going on him through you become the definition, as well as trying to say, rather than your enemies being your defining factors.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So loving your enemies is a result of finding identity in Christ and finding love in Christ. Yeah. It is not something that you have to, like, force yourself to do. It's something that you allow God to transform you into. Yeah. And so it's really, like, it's, I think, off the cuff, it kind of sounds like a stressful command from God. But when you realize it's him empowering you to do it, then it stops being stressful and starts being a joy. Yeah. It starts being like, wow, I don't even want to hate these people who hate me, because, I don't want that bitterness to crush me. Yeah.
I like that. So I want to check real quick, because sometimes there's been so quiet on YouTube. I'm always like, has someone said something and it didn't show up? No. Okay, good. I didn't want to make sure I'm not missing anyone say anything, but yeah. So I think that encapsulates it well. Is there anything else that's on your mind?
No. I mean, that's pretty much all I got.
Cool. Well, then I will move to the next scene here. So I want to thank you guys for watching. It's been a lot of fun. We broadcast every week, Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will be live again tomorrow at 7 p.m. where Tim and I, and possibly also Axeman, will be talking again on the topic that we brought up on Monday, simply because my internet connection just jarbled up for God knows why. So I want to do that again, redo, so that way we can enjoy it rather than like be frustrated with how many times it skipped frames. God. Like you would think it was a Japanese film from the old times because I was saying things, my words were after my lips were moving. It was that bad. I was like,
those lovely English dubs.
I know, I can't do anything about it.
Yep.
So we'll be doing that again on Saturday, so make sure you're there for that. And if this has really blessed you, please consider liking it, subscribing to us, and sharing it with your friends, because we really want to get this out to other people so they can be blessed with it too.
Yeah.
So make sure to do that. But thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you again this...
Love you.
We'll see you again this Saturday at 7 p.m. Halloween, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys have a good night.